And we are back with the show once again. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here. Well, we've been doing a lot of things this holiday season, talking about a lot of things as far as for best of the year, best of the decade, holiday gift ideas, etc., 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 etc. But you know what? I have to every single year have to count on some great things when it comes to the world of books. And who better knows the book world than just some awesome people? But we could only get one today because the other one's too busy trying to go ahead and get those pre-orders for a book, which I'll talk about in a second. But we've got one half of the awesome podcast team right here for you today. It's from check out the Wine, Women, and Words podcast. It is the Wine, Women, and Words podcast. You got to check it out today as they go each week and interview some of the best authors from around the world as they go ahead and tell you all about the books that they're doing and about the literary world and some of the books that they like to do while they're sipping on a little bit of the vino right there for you. It is a fellow national graduate, indeed. It is Michele Leivas. And Michele, great to have you on once again talking books. And yes, our when we talk about you and I graduating from National University, we also have to mention, Mr. Josh Peterson.
I know. I hear that name is kind of like a mystery around here. This person who does not listen to the podcast. That's so rude.
Yes, 50,000 downloads. And thank you so much for everyone who has done so. Maybe 3 by him. But, he's like Adam Driver, who doesn't want to listen to his own self, after it's already been done with. So I'll be that. Be that as it may. So.
I can understand that a little. One of my least favorite things when I'm transcribing interviews or editing the show is to hear my own voice. So sometimes I kind of cringe when I hear myself and go, oh, that's what I sound like.
Well, it's funny because you and I had mentioned our favorite friend in life when it comes to podcast editing, and that is Audacity. Thank you, Audacity, by the way. And you could tell our voices. You could see right there in the wavelengths. You could see when you're coming up. You could see when you're about to say certain words. You know when you're going to say an So it's just so funny that you say that after years of seeing Audacity, you see the wavelengths. And yes, I know exactly what you mean. But yes, our fellow graduate, Josh Peterson, does send his regards to both you and also Diana. I also want to mention as well, before we go ahead and have our conversation here on the book world, that speaking of books, not only do I talk about a great book from Josh, Congratulations, You Suck, on every single episode, but Diana Tierney, your cohort in crime, as Josh is mine, your cohort in crime, Diana Tierney, she's coming out with her debut novel, The Woman in Red, and it is available in summer 2020, but you can pre-order it today and check out all the info on it and all that at Amazon.com. Is that correct?
It is. So it's very exciting. We're super proud of her. Her book, The Woman in Red, comes out August 2020, like you said, and it's everywhere now. It's on Goodreads if anyone is a fan of Goodreads. It helps keep my to-be-read pile much more manageable and keep track of the books that I already have read so I don't accidentally repeat anything. So she's on Goodreads as an author. You can go ahead and mark her book Want to Read for when it comes out. She is, for her author career, she's going under the name Diana Giovinazzo. So if you look her up under Tierney and don't find it, don't panic. It's under Diana Giovinazzo.
I wonder if Josh should have done that as well. It should have said like Josh Pellegrino or something like that. I don't know. For his book. But yes, that is The Woman in Red. You can pre-order today on Amazon. Just look for it. It's right there for you. Or also as well, like you said, Goodreads, BarnesandNoble.com, I'm assuming as well.
As far as I know, it's wherever you can get your hands on it.
Sweet, absolutely. And then you could also go, like Josh has said before, with his book, Congratulations, You Suck. You could also walk into a Barnes & Noble and pre-order it there as well.
Yes.
Well, let's get down to the nitty-gritty when it comes to the literary world. You wanted to talk about great holiday book ideas because it is not too late to order some great books out there, because books are something not only you can get quickly, you can get cheap, you can get at a great price, but you can also, worst comes to worst, and you're really panicking on what to do last minute, you can always, if you know they have a Kindle or they have a Nook, you can go ahead and just buy the digital version and get it zapped right over there. So I want to hear your thoughts, Michele, on some great holiday book ideas before we get into your choices for the books of the decade.
So bookworms are notoriously easy to shop for. Odds are we share similar passions as far as favorite gifts. Gift cards, you really can't go wrong. Honestly, I know some people think that gift cards aren't impersonal, but imagine unleashing a child with free money into a toy store. If you picture that joy, it's the same joy that bookworms feel with when they walk into a bookstore with a gift card. And
I have that same feeling if I walk into a Best Buy with that same type of gift card. So
it's guilt-free shopping because you're not even spending your money. And then you start playing the game of, okay, well, I can get these books. And if I go over, I'm still only spending like maybe $5 or $10, whatever you go over. But coffee mugs, I always say this every year, but I've already gotten 2 coffee mugs for Christmas, and I've had serious like debates in the morning which one I want to use because they're both awesome. Any Harry Potter people out there, I have a Harry Potter water bottle and a Harry Potter coffee mug on my Christmas list that I'm not sure people are taking seriously when I say I want that, but I really do.
And that's something, if I could ask you real quick when it comes to Harry Potter, because my wife and kids are Harry Potter fanatics, as we will soon see when we go back to Universal Studios here in a little bit. But I want to ask you real quick, Harry Potter has maintained its relevance in our pop culture, and it's maintained its importance, and people still are Harry Potterheads still. And not necessarily because of the movies that have come out as far as the Fantastic Beasts and whatnot, because it's been mixed results so far when it comes to those movies, but it's just the sheer Harry Potter love itself, as opposed to the Lord of the Rings, which has kind of died off since the movies, the heights of the movie success. But I feel with the Lord of the Rings Amazon series that could come out, if it's done well, I think that could bring that to life as well. But explain to me why Harry Potter at this point in time endears itself to a more modern culture than, let's say, the Lord of the Rings, in your opinion, per se.
Well, in my opinion, I think it's just, first of all, I know people all over the place who are listening to this or watching this right now will probably throw things at my portion of the screen when I say I have not read Lord of the Rings. I have tried, and it's a very dense read, and I did try to read it when I was like 16. So maybe it deserves another shot, but it's a very dense
You're
read.
not alone. I have tried to. I am audiobooking it at the present time, just to let you know. I'm
Okay.
trying to get through it. The thing is, if you watch the film first and love the film so much as I do, and in fact, I named 2 kids after them, it's hard for me to get into the books because it's so vastly different than what I saw on screen.
Well, the thing that got me with the books is that every time at the beginning of the first book, every time a new character was introduced, it was like we go over their entire family tree back however many generations, and by the time at least I got back to the story, I forgot what was going on because I was so wrapped up in this one character's family history. But Harry Potter, I don't know what has made it so special, but there's so many ways for readers and fans to immerse themselves in that world. J.K. Rowling created a world, and she's brilliant for doing this, that you could find your spot in it. With the houses alone, Gryffindor and Ravenclaw and Slytherin and Hufflepuff, no matter who the reader was, there was a house that they could relate to, So I think that's part of what it is, and just the brilliance of the stories.
I'll tell you what, that's excellent analysis right there for you. Once again, I'm talking to Michele Leivas, one half of the Wine, Women, and Words podcast team. You got to check out what they're doing today on the Wine, Women, and Words podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, or if you need more information on them, it is winewomenwordspodcast.com. So I already interrupted you once, and I apologize for doing that on the Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter debate I just threw out there. Let's get back to your holiday book ideas, because I know you have probably even a longer list after some great ideas, which you did last year as well. Again, the gift cards for the bookstores and different ways you can get books, but also the mugs. Just again, you've mentioned that repeatedly, and I guess cannot thank you enough, because it is something very beneficial and something that book readers really do want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand from the giver's end that you may feel like, oh well, it's a coffee mug. This feels cheap, or like not something that they will love. But honestly, you don't have to spend a ton of money to make someone love the gift that you get them. And I mean, mugs are awesome. And book lovers need mugs. They also need fuzzy socks. And preferably, if you can find like themed socks that go with their favorite books. I know I've seen a million Star Wars socks out there. And blankets, I got a fuzzy blanket and it's amazing. And I'm really bummed out that it's Christmas themed, so I have to put it away after December ends.
Well, how about hot cocoa? I know this you're the Wine Women and Words podcast, but doesn't hot cocoa? I mean, you can get actually a lot of specialty hot cocos out there that might also mix in well for some good book reading.
Oh, absolutely. I know. I mean, even my kids got little hot cocoa kits that, they look like a reindeer and it's super cute. And you get a mug and throw that into the mug with a gift card for books, and you have made someone's afternoon.
Absolutely. Are there any more compelling book titles that you feel people should go ahead and get as a last minute gift for the holidays?
Well, some books that I am loving right now that are, well, new to me. I don't actually know how. I think one of them is actually a series on Amazon Prime right now. It's called The Feed. And if you haven't watched The Feed, I highly recommend it. I binged it in like 3 days, maybe. Total awesome Mother of the Year parenting was done during those 3 days. But it is a very eerily believable alternate future where people have, basically you take the smartphone and stick it in your brain, so you see all of your text messages and memories and the news. You just see it in your vision, like hovering. So the first season is on right now, and I finished the first season and said, this has to be a book, and I need to look it up, because if it's a book, I need to read it. And the book is amazing. I think it came out a couple of years ago, and the season just scratched the very surface of the book. So it's not like you're reading something you've already watched. There's plenty more to learn about that world.
Excellent ideas. Just I cannot thank you enough for sharing those ideas out there. So you better listen out there, especially you guys and gals out there that have a bookworm in their lives. You got to make sure, if you're running around, you forgot the last couple of days and you're like, oh my goodness, I forgot, which, happens in our daily lives and whatnot. Just please remember some of those great ideas that Michele has listed off for us. But there's another list I want you to talk about before we head on out, and that is your books of the decade, because I've been talking about with a lot of different people out there from various parts of the world on their basis of pop culture and some various aspects of it. And, we can't go ahead and have a list in the decade without having your list, or the Wine Women and Words list of exactly the best literary finds of the decade. And I bow down to you as far as your expertise. I can only say one. I will give everybody out there Blood, Sweat, and Pixels by Jason Schreier of Kotaku. If somebody wants to know the inside of the video game industry, I've said it before, and actually Josh turned me on to it. This was an outstanding read, and I think it's something, if people want to get an insight on that, that's probably the best thing I've read so far to date. But outside of that, I think I'm going to go ahead and bequeath to you your knowledge on exactly your list of the best literary finds of the decade.
So this is going to be my list because if you were asked Diana, our list would be completely different. Well, maybe not completely. We would.
I've listened to your episodes before. Yes, that is pretty much true. Yes.
I'm sure that we would have a couple of the same ones. I would start with uh, a young adult series. Full disclosure, I've only read the first one, but there's a reason behind it. But there's a series out there called Dorothy Must Die. And it's basically not a retelling, but it's a continuation of The Wizard of Oz after Dorothy has defeated the Wicked Witch of the West and she has, taken over Oz, but Dorothy has turned into basically this evil dictator and she's just destroying Oz and the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion, they're just evil, 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 evil. So a band of witches bring over another girl from Earth to kill Dorothy. I've read the first book. I still haven't read the second two, but the first one was amazing. So, and I've heard really great things about the other two. So I highly recommend at least starting with Dorothy Must Die and see how you like it. It is, if you love The Wizard of Oz, and I'm a huge fan, it is a little uncomfortable to read Dorothy as such a terrible, terrible human being, but I'm always very impressed with authors who can take such beloved characters and still find a way to make them their own in their own story. So that is definitely one I highly recommend. Another one is any Erin Morgenstern fans out there will recognize the name The Night Circus. That one came out in 2012. I just looked that up before we started the show because she just came out with her second book, which is, I'm sorry, I have to look it up because I just was so focused. The Starless Sea, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. She just came out with that book last month, I want to say, or early December. So if you love The Night Circus, if you haven't picked up The Night Circus, you need to do it. And then you need to buy The Starless Sea. It's a completely different story. They're not connected, but she is a phenomenal writer and she has an imagination that I wish I could just like siphon off a little bit of it for myself because she can create worlds that are so beautiful, and to just read her descriptions of the way that she creates these scenes in your head, it's mind-blowing. Let's see, another author that I discovered last year is Christina Henry. She's actually a local author here in Chicago. And I read one of her books. My husband got one of her books for me for Christmas last year. And I read her book and I texted Diana and I said, we need to bring her on the show because I need to be her friend. And so we brought her on the show. She has a duology of a retelling of sorts of Alice in Wonderland. The first one is just called Alice. And it's basically after Alice gets back from Wonderland and she's thrown into a mental hospital because she's saying, she went to Wonderland and had tea with the Mad Hatter and people think she's crazy. And what I really loved about that story is it's not necessarily the Wonderland that we know. Christina Henry kind of transformed all of the characters that like the caterpillar and the walrus and the Mad Hatter. They're all like these mob bosses that run different quarters of the city. And it's very good. The sequel to that is The Red Queen. And then she has The Lost Boy, which is a origin story of Captain Hook. And you will not recognize Neverland as she tells it, but it's her own story. And you will hate Peter Pan by the end of the book if you are a huge.
Because you're seeing it from Hook's perspective.
You are, and it's not the perspective that you would expect. And he starts out completely different from this, evil pirate that we grew up hating as children. And she actually just came out with a newer book earlier this year called The Girl in Red, which was kind of a post-apocalyptic Little Red Riding Hood. A very good book. And she doesn't stay within the realm of like fairy tale retellings. She does her own thing and other stories. I admittedly have not read her other work yet. I've been so obsessed with her fairy tale retellings and origin stories that I've just stayed in that niche. But I do know I need to branch out.
Well, that's a great list right there for you. Any others on the, that you've read that you think stand out for this decade?
Another one I read earlier, actually in January of this year, was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And I recommend this book to anyone. If I have a chance to bring it up, I will. It's by Stuart Turton. He's British. And just to give you an idea of how dedicated he was to telling this story and getting it right and nailing the plot line and the plot twists, he wrote 30 drafts of this book and had a spreadsheet because it all takes place in this British manor and everyone's kind of trapped there and you find out why. But it's like an Agatha Christie-ish murder mystery where the character has to figure out who kills Evelyn Hardcastle by the end of the day. But there's like some time travel thrown in there and little science fiction, quantum leap stuff. But when he was writing this book, he had a spreadsheet of all the characters, and there were like 12 to 15 characters in this story. And he had a spreadsheet, and he could tell you in 5-minute increments where every single character was in the manor or on the grounds. So if an author is that dedicated to telling the story right, you know it has to be good. And it is amazing. It's an amazing book.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm actually thinking about going ahead and several of these books that you've mentioned, checking it out on Amazon and get my Kindle kicked back up again after I go through the audiobook of, because it's when it comes to Lord of the Rings, getting back to that real quickly, Lord of the Rings is probably for me best in that because it's just so long and so much to consume. I think that's probably best on the long drives to work and whatnot. So things of that nature. But the books that you've mentioned as far as for best of decade, I hope everyone takes it in consideration. I know I am, as far as things that we need to go ahead and check out for literary reads. And all of these books that you mentioned can be found obviously on all the standard Goodreads, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, the Nook, the Kindle, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep in mind that we have a very limited amount of time. I could probably give you a list of another 50 books that I would recommend. Those are the ones that when I sat down to make my list for tonight, the ones that came to mind immediately. But I have an entire bookcase behind me that with many, many more titles that I would throw out there.
Well, if you ever make up a list like that, I can always throw it on the popculturecosmos.wordpress.com site, which, by the way, you still have many articles that people still read. And Diana's famous article is still garnering so many comments and so many reads over the course of a month. It's still very mind-boggling to me indeed. But yes, you're more than welcome to do that. I'll post it, and I'll actually make sure on our social media everybody knows about it. If you want to take the time to do so, I'd be glad and honored to, if that was the case. So, either which way, we're just so happy to have you part of the show. Once again, it's Michele Leivas from the Wine Women and Words podcast. You got to check out her show along with Diana Tierney. You got to check out those two when they talk to great authors from around the world each and every week on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because I just found out Spotify is more popular in Canada than Apple Podcasts. That blew me away. So I was just like, wow, okay, Spotify, go, go, go. Or wherever you get your podcasts, because they're all over. But before we head on out, I got to ask you, I've spoken about Wine and Words. I've spoken about Diana's new book, which is coming out next next August, which you can go ahead and pre-order today, The Woman in Red. But you got to tell me before you head on out why people need to listen to the Wine, Women, and Words podcast.
Well, because we just like to pick authors' brains. I know, if you hear book club, I mean, sometimes it's people don't really read the book. It's just an excuse to get together and chat, which there's totally nothing wrong with that. I have done it many, many times. But we just love to create a super casual atmosphere with the author, and we fangirl over several of them, much to our embarrassment. But it's just, I feel like, or I hope at least, that some of the questions that we ask are similar, if not the same questions that you sit there and ask yourself when you're reading the book or when you're done with the book and you go, I wish I could talk to the author and ask her why she did this or why he killed off that character when we loved him so much. It's asking the questions that make you want to throw the book across the room in frustration, or, cry that it's over, or start reading it over again immediately.
Or seek out the author and just throw the book at him. It's like, that's yours. Give me my money back.
There have been a few authors that we've brought on the show simply because we needed answers. Like, we read the books independently outside of the show and text each other and went, okay, we need to bring this author on the show. I have too many questions. So it's a lot of fangirling, and that only book lovers will understand and appreciate. But we have a lot of fun, and I hope that translates into the episodes that people download.
And again, if you didn't hear it before from me already, I'm going to tell you once again, it's an awesome podcast. I have heard it many times before, and you need to hear it too. If you're into books of any kind, whether they're the author that they're talking to or just Michele and Diana just talking to each other as they get a little tipsy, which is always the funniest part of the show, per se. It is the Wine, Women, and Words podcast. You got to listen to it to wherever you get your podcasts. Well, Michele, my fellow national graduate, by the way, National U, go National. We never have a mascot name. That's something I always wanted to figure out. Do we? If we did, I don't remember it.
I don't. I want to say I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But
well, it's not like they have a sports team.
No.
But anyways, shout out to everybody at NU that's there. We just want to say thank you for everything you've done for us. And, Josh, the NU slacker that he is, is also sending you his best. But last but not least, I wanted to wish you and Diana both a tremendous holiday this season. Just a happy holiday. Merry Christmas to you, both of you and your entire families. And safe travels out there and all that. And good reading for you this holiday, my friend.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you.
Absolutely. It is Michele Leivas from the Wine, Women, and Words podcast. So glad to have you here, a part once again, each and every year, shouting off great holiday book ideas and the books of the decade, this time right here on the Pop Culture Cosmos.